Becoming a guitar maker was basically a result of my obsession with trying to make something entirely. I could write the music on the instrument, but what if I had a hand in the actual vessel from which that music came? I think it must be very human to want to create something in the purest form possible, and so inevitably, once I'd become accustomed to making musical instruments, I started thinking about what it would be like to make the tools with which I crafted the instrument. I've made my peace that I can't dig up every little root that starts to grow around my knowledge, but sometimes we'll leap on a moment and we'll call it serendipity, if only just to indulge a curiosity when it's dressed in a convenient excuse. A few weeks ago, I had the fortune of meeting Joe. Joe's a blacksmith, and it's his field that I'm camping in right now. Admittedly not the most regular bonding experience, but we did figure out from chatting that we both had a great desire to make a chisel. Joe agreed to teach me, and that's why I'm here at his forge, folded amongst the beautiful Somerset Hills here in England. I brought along my favourite Japanese chisel from my own workshop, with the intention of making something inspired by its design. I'm a total beginner here, but I'm hoping that by having you along for this video, we might both end up learning something. Welcome to Thornwood Forge. Okay, I'm done with the artsy intro. Just so you know, this video is sponsored by Universe, who are a code-free website builder who are going to be hosting the webpage that will allow you a chance to get your hands on the chisel that we make in this video. Thanks so much to Universe for the support. I will jump back in a bit later with a bit more about that. But right now, Joe's going to tell us what kind of steel we need for this project.
We can use some old leaf spring. Take a piece of leaf spring from an old truck, forge it out, and make a chisel.
What is leaf spring?
So leaf springs are what vehicles use before coil springs. So you know how your car has coil springs in your PNS suspension?
Yeah.
So the old style is leaf springs, where you have basically flat bars of steel, and quite a few of them layered up, and it works like a bow.
Ah. Yes, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I've never seen a leaf spring before in my life. But anyway, Joe's going to now show us everything we need to know in a handy little diagram.
If we're going for a socket, we can start with thinner stock, so we can start with a 5.5mm, which means we have to forge it down a lot less. And then we'll probably start with a shape like this. So cut a couple of little triangles in. So we'll use like a crossbeam, flare the socket out to this sort of shape before rolling it up.
Now we knew what we were going to make, it was time to start cutting our stock, which Joe eloquently put was going to be
dirty, smelly, noisy, but necessary.
That's what my boyfriend calls me.
The guard cells the right width and the right thickness there, and just start forging it.
Great.
Over coal or charcoal or anything like that for a few reasons. One is that fuel is consistent, so propane is propane wherever you are. Getting good coal is getting harder and harder. We tend to use coke is to coal what charcoal is to wood. So you burn coal in an oxygen-free environment and you get coke. And it's really difficult to get good coke nowadays. So gas is a lot more consistent in terms of fuel. It's also a lot better for your health. You don't have a lot of sulfur and impurities and dust coming off the coke, which isn't good for you long term. It's very easy in terms of making multiple things at once. You can have more than one thing in the fire and it won't start burning. If you put a piece of steel in a coke forge at 1600 degrees, that's going to burn. This gas forge will sit at about 1050 degrees consistently, so you can leave steel in there, warming up while you're working on another piece. So if we're making multiple items, it's a lot better for that.
Okay, sciencey stuff over. Time for me to get a little bit more involved.
Yeah. And every time I say yeah, you're just going to hit the back of that.
Right.
Don't worry about hitting it really, really hard to start with. Just get a feel for it.
Yeah.
Have your hands nice and wide, so you've got good support. And you just aim to hit the back of that.
Okay.
Okay? Yeah. Okay. Let's give it a go.
What we're doing here is creating that triangle that Joe showed in his drawing. This will separate the material for the socket from the material for the blade.
Yeah. We're creating a little notch in the side there. If we just keep forging in on one side, it will collapse the other side and it won't form a very nice shape. So what we're going to do is use this little block, put it in the hardy hole in the anvil, and use that to basically support the other side in there. So when we forge down on one side, the other side gets forged into the right shape at the same time.
Not sure I would have trusted me with a sledgehammer for my first job, but nevertheless we made progress without incident, and it was time to move on to something a bit more complicated.
And what we're going to do, we have a flat die on the bottom, and we have an aggressive die on the top. We're going to use that aggressive die to draw lines down here, like so. And as that starts to spread, we're going to follow that angle. So then instead of just going in straight lines like this, we're going to follow that round. So we'll do that angle, and that angle, that angle, and follow that round.
Much to the displeasure of my anxiety, it was time to use the power hammer, which is the scariest thing I've ever seen in my life. But of course a necessary evil, as it allows us to spread evenly that steel into that flare shape that Joe just drew for us on his little blackboard. I've got to say, I was reassured by the plasticine-like texture of the steel when I was hitting it. Although each hit removes fragments of the steel, it was quite reassuring to know that if worse comes to worse, we could just put it back in the forge, reheat it, and re-hit it. Refreshingly different to my own medium of wood, which is, of course, notoriously unforgiving. Now that was all flat, Joe took the lead and started bashing the steel into the shape of the socket. One thing I learned very quickly about Joe, like a lot of masters of their craft, is that they make things that are actually very difficult look very easy. Well, most of the time he did anyway. Despite my heckling, or perhaps because of it, Joe decided to step up my responsibilities once again and get me to trim the blade. And I must say, I did find out the hard way that I've been skipping arm day at the gym.
Yeah, right, it's a nice and hard. Harder. Right on top. Good, keep going. Keep going. Break up.
Yeah? Hey!
Ta-da!
Look at that!
Almost looks like a chisel.
It does look like a chisel! We're good.
So we're going to forge a quick mandrel to help us form the socket of the chisel. We're just going to use a piece of mild steel, 20mm round. We're going to forge a taper on the end. It's a short piece of stock, so we're going to use some tongs to help us hold it. Like using chopsticks, but harder.
Oh, cool. You know, I found with woodworkers that some of us love to make jigs, and others, myself included, absolutely will do everything to avoid it. But with blacksmithing, I do get the impression that projects rarely pass without the introduction of some kind of jig. And I guess I really admire the discipline that comes with that. You'll even notice that Joe puts a 90-degree bend into the mandrel so that it sits in the vise without issue. This really emphasised to me the dedication and experience of a true craftsman who wouldn't cut a single corner.
Work your way down the seam. Make sure it's nice and closed up.
It was really starting to look like a chisel now, so I thought it was the perfect time to go get myself a little snack. When I came back, Joe had whipped up an entirely new one, just because he thought that he could do it better a second time round, which is obviously the most craftsperson thing I've ever heard in my life. But it did mean we now had two and therefore could work on one each. So we got started on forging the bevels in to match the Japanese chisel, and then got busy squaring up the sides on the sander. Of course, we didn't forget the hollow bevel that was going to go on the back plate of the chisel. It's often seen on Japanese chisels like mine, and it just aids with the sharpening process because it makes that back of the chisel really quick to flatten. Time for a personal stamp, I reckon. which point I demanded Joe had a snack too. Do you want a biscuit?
I'd love a biscuit, thank you.
While we snacked, Joe started asking about the guitar string knife that I made with Holly Loftus. I told him about the great success of raffling off the knife and the joy that it brought the person who won that raffle, as well as how we donated the proceeds to provide studio space in London for a craftsperson for a year. Me and Joe realised that we now actually had 2 chisels, and we thought, why don't we do the same thing again? Sell raffle tickets for about £1, nice and cheap, and then give one of these chisels away to one of our viewers. I asked Joe if there was a particular charity close to his heart, and immediately he started umming and ahhing and deciding what he was going to say to the camera about it.
I'm going to voice over that saying you're praying.
So, at the end of the video, once this project is done, Joe's going to talk to the camera and tell you a little bit about where we're going to donate the proceeds of the raffle tickets for this project. But before that, here's a quick word about how you can actually enter. And conveniently, the sponsor for today's video, Universe, is actually going to help us out with that. And I'm actually going to build out the landing page for the website for this chisel right now, and I'll show you how easy it is to use Universe and its great features to do so. Universe is a drag and drop app for creating websites where you can easily pick a personalized .com domain and hyper customize your site to match your creative vision. You can use it on your iPhone, iPad, or computer. I really want to keep this landing page as clean as possible, so I've gone for a very minimalist design, and I'm just going to change a few details there on the template. There is an option to add things like an online shop or a portfolio, but I'm just going to keep it really basic. I've added a couple of extra buttons to the landing page, so this one is going to link to this video, and then the next one I'm going to put a link through to Thornwood Forge in case you guys want to get in touch to make your own chisel. And I thoroughly appreciated how user-friendly this website is. You could also make the jump to Pro if you want to start selling or remove Universe branding and things like getting access to the code block and unlocking additional customization options. If you want to give it a go, you can use the second link in my YouTube description to get 25% off the first year of Universe Pro, or use the first link to try Universe for free. Big thanks to Universe for supporting this channel and therefore this project. Now it's time for a little bit of heat treatment, because right now the chisels are incredibly soft. The way we're going to do that is to whack them in the kiln for an hour, take them out, and then quench them to make them hard. Then we'll apply direct heat via a blowtorch to make them less brittle. Time to light up the blowtorch, and Joe's going to explain the different colours that we're looking for the steel to assume once we get it going.
So this is an oxypropane torch. It's a mixture of propane and oxygen, which burns really, really hot. And we're going to use it to temper these chisels. So we're going to start the socket and heat this up. We want to create a differential temper, so the socket is softer than the rest of the chisel. But you can see now, if you have a look at that, you can see the colours start to bleed through. So we've got a blue up at the end of the socket, and we want this pale yellow colour to be on the cutting edge. But this blue is what we want for the socket. Now we'll just do the socket.
It didn't take too long to do this stage with the blowtorch, and before we knew it, we had 2 beautiful chisel heads ready for handles. Joe made sure they would be safe for the journey, wrapping them in masking tape ready for me to take back to my own workshop.
Oh, that's so cute!
I realised I missed the forge as soon as I left. My home is in London, but I do wish that I had a beautiful spot out in the countryside like Joe does. Nonetheless, they had to come home with me because I was ready to start making a handle. After a rummage around in my wood stock, I looked for the piece that I'd had in mind for this project all along. An off-cut piece of sycamore that I used on a guitar neck last year. It's from a British tree, and it has some beautiful flame running through it that I think would be a really wonderful addition. I was aiming to make a sort of conical shape that I could then slot into the chisel, much like the mandrel. My plan was then to epoxy it in and then add a ring of different timber around the edge to seal the gap nicely and provide a bit of colour contrast. But anyway, I'm going to shut up now and let you enjoy the process of seeing this handle made. I got to the end of the process and I was so excited to finally give this chisel a sharpen and give it a little test on some of the wood that I had on my bench at that moment. This project and also filming this video has just been the most fun ever, so thank you if you've got all the way through this video and you're here to see the final moments of me chiseling some nice spruce. The chisel ran like a dream and I can't wait to send this out to one person who enters our raffle. As promised, I've left some important time just about to come up at the end of this video where Joe is going to talk to you about the charity that we're going to send all of the proceeds from the raffle ticket sales to.
So the Able to Achieve Charity Trust is about helping adults with learning difficulties, autism, mental health struggles achieve their aspirations really and live as independently as possible. They've got a shop, they've got a bakery and they've got cafes that the learners can work in. They come here to the Forge and they work with loads of different people from coppicers to hedge layers and all sorts of people to try and get these learners as many experiences in life as they can. A lot of the companies that work with adults with learning difficulties follow the funding and the learner comes second to the funding and Able to Achieve is entirely learner focused. Everything is about trying to give the learners as good a life as possible, from providing housing to the support staff to giving them experiences like blacksmithing and it's just really cool. There's nowhere else that provides that really as well.
If you want to give to Able to Achieve and also get your hands on this, I think, beautiful chisel, then please do follow the link in the bio. You can enter there. Thanks guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did making it. I hope you'll stick around on the channel and catch some future projects. In the meantime, the links are all in the bio. Everything you need to know is there. I can't wait for one of you to get this chisel sent out to you. See you next time.